Welcome back, Rockin' Readers. It's time for The Strangers, Greystone Secrets book number 1. Today we're going to be reading part 8 in the book, starting with chapter 24. Chess. Emma, 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 Chess said, patting his sister's shoulder. It's not gone. It just moved. Or we moved, so it looks like it's in a different place. He pointed off to the left, where a thin sliver of light spread across the floor like an arrow pointing toward a crack in the wall. He was still getting oriented himself. The overhead lights had gone out and come back on and flickered again, and now they were only dimly, like emergency lights leading out of a burning building or a crashed airplane. Okay, maybe those aren't the best comparisons to make. The floor beneath them gave a shudder, as if it were considering starting up again. Let's get out of here, Emma cried, running toward the sliver of light and the opening. Rocket, Rocket, are you okay? Emma, Chess began. But Finn and Natalie ran after her, as if they were just as spooked. Chess dashed for the door as well, because Emma had infected him with a sudden fear. What if the door closed and he got stuck in the secret room all by himself? But what if the door closes after we're out and we never get it back open again, he thought. What if there's some secret in the hidden room that we need so we can figure out how to find Mom? Just before he stepped out, he bent down and grabbed a can of green beans from the nearest shelf. He wedged the can against the door frame, so even if the door tried to shut on its own, the can would keep it propped open. Then he slammed headfirst into Natalie's back. Oh, sorry, Chess mumbled. I wasn't looking where I was. Natalie surprised him by clutching his arm. Didn't we leave the light on in your mom's office? She asked. Finn and Emma grabbed onto Chess as well. Chess blinked, trying to make out the familiar furniture of the boring room. The desk, the chair, the bookshelves. His eyes adjusted a little to the strangely dim light, but he couldn't get them to see anything but blank floor and empty walls. Light switch, Emma said, daring to step away and stride toward the opposite wall. She hit the wall, and Chess braced for the bright overhead light of the boring room to come back on. A light bulb flickered and sizzled, and then steadied, but only sent out a low wattage glow. Chess looked down at the swirls on the floor, swirls of dust on an otherwise empty concrete floor. This isn't your mom's office, Natalie cried. We ended up in somebody else's house. Chapter 25. Finn. Ian? Mr. and Mrs. Hahn? Mrs. Childers? Finn started calling out the names of all the closest neighbors he could think of. Shh, Emma said, grabbing his arm warningly. We don't know whose house we're in. Right, Finn said, in what he thought was a very reasonable tone. So we should make as much noise as possible, so someone will come down and tell us. Also, so no one thinks we're sneaking around doing something wrong, like stealing stuff. The Hans live on the one side of us, and Mrs. Childers live on the other. So whichever way that room spun us around, we... Finn, Cheshire said sharply. He walked over to the doorway that led out from the little room that they were in, into what Finn guessed had to be the room beyond. Chess opened the door a crack, then looked back at the others. Do either Hans or Mrs. Childers have a totally empty basement? No, silly, Finn said, laughing. Ian Hahn has more toys than we do in his basement. And Mrs. Childers, remember that time she paid us to move her Christmas ornaments down to her basement? Well, she wanted to pay us, but Mom said it was enough that she fed us cookies, even though they were kind of stale. And Emma pushed past Finn and Chess and shoved the door leading into the next room completely open. Finn saw a space like the wide-open part of the Greystones' basement, with tiny half-windows at the top letting in murky light. The light shone down on nothing but a bare concrete floor. This basement doesn't even have carpet, Emma said. Don't the Hans and Mrs. Childers have carpet? Natalie turned side to side, facing first one direction, then another. She pointed and her lips moved silently. Then she looked up at everyone else. The main part of your basement was on the side that faced the street, she said. So, if we're not in the house to the left or the right, on the same street as you, what do you know about the house behind yours? Or on the next street over? Behind your backyard, I mean. There's not a house right behind ours, Chess said. There's a bunch of trees. If it weren't for all those trees, it'd be a great place to play football, Finn said. That's how much space there is before you get to the next street over. Emma walked out to the main part of the basement and squinted up at the tiny windows. Nothing but brushes, she muttered. At least that's all we can see from here. She whirled back toward the others. It felt to me like we were just spinning. But what if the secret room is on some sort of track? Like a trolley? Could it have carried us all the way to the street behind ours? I guess, Chef said. But he had his whole face smushed up into a squint, like he was really saying, none of this makes any sense. I'll find out where we are, Natalie said, yanking her phone from her back pocket. Her thumbs flew, then she looked up, squinting just as hard at Chess. That's weird. I don't have service down here. Then let's go upstairs. Finn raced for the stairs. He glanced back to see that nobody else was following him. He paused on the bottom step. What are you waiting for? Finn, Chess began. He pointed back towards the door they'd come through. Maybe we should just go back to our house, through the secret room. We probably still have time to pet Rocket a little before Miss Morelli is worried about us. What if we go back through the secret room and it spins us again, and we end up somewhere else? Emma asked. Or we get stuck. Why can't I get my phone to work? Natalie grumbled. She waved it in the air and held it up toward the nearest window, as if that would make a difference. Something surprising occurred to Finn. Are you all scared? He asked. Just because you don't know where the spinning room took us. Does it scare you that much when you don't know stuff? He jumped up to the next higher step. You should all remember what it's like to be a second grader. There's lots of stuff I don't know or understand, and I'm fine. That wasn't entirely true. If he thought about Mom being gone, he didn't feel fine at all. But he was fine with the spinning room. He was fine with being in a strange house. As far as he was concerned, the mystery of it was a great way to keep his mind off of missing Mom. Here, he said, I'll make it easy for you. Catch me. He dashed up the rest of the stairs and burst through the door at the top, crying out, Hello? I'm lost. Whoever lives here, can you tell me where we are? As soon as he was through the door, Finn poked his head around the corner and looked around. You all are worrying about nothing, he called back over his shoulder. This whole house is empty. We're not bothering anyone. It was a little creepy to see the expanse of the bare floor before him. And why wasn't there more light? Instinctively, Finn gazed toward the place where he'd seen the nearest window if he'd come up the basement stairs in his own house. Oh, there was a window, but it was boarded up, covered with plywood. The only reason any light crept into the house at all was because the plywood was cracked. Natalie shoved her way up the stairs behind Finn. What's with the windows? She asked. Nobody would be able to sell a house with the windows all boarded up. Who does that? None of our neighbors, Finn said. No one on our street. So is this house on the street behind yours? Natalie asked. Let's see, Finn said. He crossed the room before him, which seemed to be at about the same size and shape as his family's living room. He reached for the doorknob of the front door. It was stiff and hard to turn, so by the time he managed to wrench it open, not just Natalie, but even Chess and Emma were clustered right beside him. The door opened, so everybody had to step back. Finn saw a crumbling porch first, then a weedy, overgrown yard, and then the tall fences blocking off houses on either side. The fences soared so high that probably even Chess couldn't see over them. They also had rusty, spiky wires lining the top of them. Do you recognize where we are now? Natalie asked, turning from Finn to Emma, to Chess. Does anything look familiar? Chess's face had turned stark white. Emma's eyes had grown so big it seemed like they'd taken over her face. It fell to Finn once again to do all the talking. I've never been here before in my life. None of us have. Chapter 26. Emma. Logic, Emma told herself. Sense, facts. Think about those and you won't panic. We can't be that far from home. But even the air seemed to be conspiring against her, making her think otherwise. The weather had been clear and sunny when she and the others stepped into their own house just, 10 or 15 minutes ago? But the threat of the storm had apparently blown in, just in that short amount of time. The sky now was full of low, ominous clouds, and the air felt murky and thick. It was the kind of air that made it hard for people to breathe if they had asthma. Emma had a problem with that when she was little. She was just lucky that she'd outgrown it. Was it coming back now? Stay logical, Emma reminded herself again. Stay calm. She made herself take a deep breath of the nasty air. This could be the street behind ours, and it's just changed a lot since the last time we were over here, she said, trying to force the doubt out of her voice. We don't come this way very often because none of us have friends in this direction. And we always go the other way to get out of the neighborhood. And there are all those trees in the way, so we never really see what's happening on the street. Oh, Natalie said. That makes sense. I'll just look at my GPS location on my phone, and she peered intently down at her phone, then back up. It's still not working. Maybe if we walk out to the street, we'll see something familiar, Emma suggested, stepping out onto the porch. Finn and Natalie, who was holding up a phone in the air again, followed close behind. I think we should go back, Chess said. He remained right on the threshold. The door opened behind him. Emma's stomach clenched at the thought of going back in the strange house, back through the secret room, and maybe even back through another round of spinning. She wanted to see something familiar and figure out where they were. And then we can walk back to our house through our own backyard. And tonight we'll be back at Miss Morales' house. And we'll figure out the code behind Mom's letter. And we'll know how to rescue her that way. And we never have to go into that secret room again. At least, not without her being with us, telling us how to work it. Emma reached back and tugged on Chess's elbow, throwing him off balance. Come on, Chess, she said. Where's your spirit of adventure? This was something Mom said sometimes. It was amazing that Emma could speak the words without starting to cry. I just want to look and see if we can find any street signs. Nothing's going to happen if we walk down this driveway for a minute. Chess toppled forward, barely missing stepping on Natalie's heels. Maybe Chess's long, gangly arms caught the edge of the door somehow. Maybe there was a breeze that Emma hadn't noticed. But as soon as Chess was out of the way, the door swung shut behind him with a loud bang. Chess jumped, knocking his shoulder against the scared wooden door. Oops, Emma said. Chess reached back and twisted the doorknob. It didn't budge. We better hope we see something familiar, he muttered, because this door's locked now, and we can't get back to the secret room. 27. Chess. I'm sorry, Emma said. Chess shook his head, unable to choke out any words. Why is this so hard? He wanted to scream. I just want Mom to be home and everything to be normal. I don't want to have to think about secret rooms or letters written in code or the fact that we are down to hand leaving only one parent and now she's gone too. I just want to be an ordinary 6th grader with an ordinary life. He might as well wish Dad was still alive. If we stick together, everything will be fine, Natalie said, as if she could tell he was about to lose it. But even she had a tense look around her eyes, like she was fighting against squeezing them shut and pretending none of this had happened. Maybe if we go out to the street, my phone will work. Sometimes there are dead zones in certain houses. Mom says she sees them all the time when she's selling houses, and sometimes the buyers even ask for lower prices because of that. I wouldn't buy a house where a phone wouldn't work, Finn agreed. Don't let Finn see how upset I am, Chess thought. Don't let Finn see how scared I am. Don't let Finn see how confused I am, how I don't understand anything. Lead the way, Chess said to Natalie. He waved his arms out to the side as if he were just being a gentleman, letting her and the others go first. Really, he just wanted to walk behind Finn and Emma so they could see his face and Chess wouldn't have to stiffen it into a confident, cheerful, unconcerned mask. He wasn't sure he was capable of doing that right now. Natalie stepped down from the crumbling concrete porch, followed by Finn and Emma together, with Chess bringing up the rear. A short sidewalk led over to the blacktop driveway, and both of the sidewalk and the blacktop were just as crumbly as the porch, with large patches of rocks and dirt showing through. What a mess, Natalie said. She covered her mouth for a moment, as if she'd said something wrong. I mean, your house is nice, and the other houses on your street are too. And if this is just one street away, it's not fair that the people who own this house just let things get so run down. It makes it so you wouldn't get as much money if you sold your house. We're not selling our house, Emma said. Oh no. If Mom really doesn't come back, would we have to sell our house? Jess wondered. Would we have to be adopted by some family we don't even know? Would we even be split up, me and Finn and Emma all going in separate places? Chess's stomach twisted, as if someone had grabbed it and tried to squeeze it down to nothing. Mom would never let anyone sell our house, Finn agreed with a little laugh, as if the whole idea was ridiculous. Mom... From behind, Chess saw the exact moment Finn's shoulders sagged, as if a terrifying idea had just hit him. What could Mom do to prevent someone from selling the house if she wasn't even there? If she never came back? Hey, Finn, Chess said too loudly. How long do you think it took to build those huge fences on the side of this house? Do you think they used different colored boards on purpose? Would you do that if we decided to build a fence around our house? I don't like fences, Finn said sulkily. They make it so you can't see. Chess cut up to Finn and put his arm around his brother's shoulder. Ahead of them, Natalie stepped past the corner of the nearest fence. She pulled Emma alongside her and asked, See anything familiar now? Emma began, turning her head right to left to right again, looking up and down the street. Natalie dipped her head toward the phone screen once more. Searching, 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 she muttered. Chess shepherded Finn out of the fence as well. Chess could have sworn every street in their neighborhood had sidewalks, but there wasn't one here. He stepped directly from the crumbling blacktop driveway out into the street. He immediately tightened his grip on Finn's shoulders and looked both ways for cars. Watch out, he warned Natalie, who was still peering at her phone. She looked up, but Chess's caution was unnecessary. There weren't any cars. The only movement on the street was a group of 5 boys headed toward them. Chess squinted, hoping he'd recognize someone from school. Maybe one of them would be able to tell Chess the name of the street and how to get back home. But these boys all looked older, maybe even high school age. 1 or 2 of them had the beginnings of beards. They all wore matching dark blue and orange, as if they were all on the same elite sports team. They all moved with the same intimidating swagger. It reminded Chess of certain boys he tried to avoid at school, the ones who went around in packs, challenging other kids to fight. Only these boys had a lot more muscles. They looked like they actually could fight, not just threaten to. Don't say anything to those boys, he whispered to Finn. What did Chess know about dealing with menacing older boys? Nothing, he gulped. Just let them walk on by. But the boy at the front, the tallest and most muscular, was looking their way. Even at a distance, Chess could see amazement flow over the boy's expression. Natalie, the boy called. Natalie Mayhew? Is that someone you know? Chess hissed at her. Natalie squinted toward the older boys. I don't think so, she whispered back. Then she raised her voice and called back to the boy. Hi? The boys came closer. It is Natalie, the guy in the front called out excitedly. Was he the leader, as if on command? All 5 boys stopped a few paces away. The 4 behind the leader slouched, not seeming not so much menacing now as idling, waiting for their next command. Yeah, it's me, Natalie said, shrugging. So what? Chess felt oddly proud of her. Of course she'd been a lip gloss girl. She'd practically run the whole elementary school. She could even hold her own even against a group of stupid high school boys. So what are you doing in this neighborhood? The leader asked. Natalie glanced down at Emma and Finn. Somehow her gaze also took in Chess, making him both feel smaller and younger. Babysitting, she said scornfully. Chess slid from feeling a little younger than Natalie to feeling like he was practically a baby. Natalie fixed such a withering gaze on the leader that he seemed to shrink an inch or two. My mother's making me, she said. Do you know my mom? Yes, of course. The boy immediately behind the leader began babbling. The leader shot him an annoyed glance, and the other boy shut up. I thought maybe you were helping scope out the neighborhood, the leader told Natalie. He stood taller, puffing out his muscular chest even more. Because this is where the criminal was found. You heard the news, right? What news? Emma dared to pipe up. Chess was torn between being proud of her courage and wanting to beg the leader. Please don't hurt my little sister. Please, she doesn't know any better. She doesn't even see that you're a bunch of bullies, and you'll probably run this whole street and... But the leader perked up like he was excited about getting to tell. I don't know how you could have missed it, he said. I thought everybody knew. There are signs up about the criminal on practically every corner. They caught her yesterday. She'd been on the run and hiding for 8 years, but the government set a trap. They spread the news that her children had been kidnapped. Or maybe they really did kidnap her children. I don't know. Anyhow, she showed up, thinking she could rescue her kids. And boom! I heard there was a SWAT waiting over there, and there, and there. He pointed up and down the street toward one tall fence or hedgerow after another. And there's going to be a public trial and sentencing this weekend. On Saturday, the leader continued. Of course everybody'll go. Chess's whole body felt tingly and strange. Maybe he was about to faint. Kidnapped children, he thought? Had the government kidnapped those kids in Arizona who had the same names and birthdays as Chess, Emma, and Finn? Or had the government pretended to? And was Mom connected somehow? 8 years. 8 years ago was when Dad died. What did he started to stammer out because he needed to know what the criminal had done. What made her a criminal? He wanted to know her name too. But he thought that might prove Mom wasn't involved, that this really didn't have anything to do with her. He didn't want it to have anything with the kidnapped kids from Arizona either. But before Chess could say another word, he heard a furious shout behind him. Natalie Maria Mayhew, just what do you think you're doing? 28. Finn. Finn swiveled his head toward the loud voice. A figure loomed in the doorway of the house they'd just left, the open doorway. Miss Morales, he cried, running toward her. You found us, and you unlocked the door. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the boys they'd been talking to take off running, as if they were terrified of Natalie's mother, or maybe of any adult. A grown-up, a mom, she'll fix everything, Finn thought. All she had to do was show up to get rid of those scary boys. But Mrs. Morales' face was like a storm cloud. Natalie, I asked you to explain. Stop it, Mom, Natalie yelled back. Why do you always think everything is my fault? Because I left you in charge, Miss Morales said. You were supposed to only go in the house, one house, the Greystones, visit a cat for 5 or 10 minutes and let me know immediately if there's any problem. And then you don't answer your phone. Nobody answers the door when I go in after a half an hour, and I find that you led the kids through some secret tunnel, trespassed in an empty house, and Lord only knows who it belongs to. And achoo! She stopped seeming quite so fierce when her first sneeze was followed by 6 more. Rocket! Finn burst out because he saw the cat rubbing against Mrs. Morales' ankles and her high-heeled shoes. Get him, achoo! Away from me, Mrs. Morales commanded. Finn stepped back into the empty house and scooped up Rocket. He held the cat off to the side, away from Miss Morales. I will, Finn promised. But listen, nothing about that empty house was Natalie's fault. I saw 4 sets of footprints in the dust, Miss Morales huffed, of varying sizes. Don't try to lie and pretend you weren't here. No, I mean, yes, we were, Finn said, but it was my fault. I'm the one who let everyone else through the empty house, and I'm the one who didn't want to go back through the tunnel, Emma admitted right behind him. And I opened the door to the tunnel, Chess said, stepping up onto the porch with Emma. Only Natalie was still out by the street, peering off into the distance. Natalie, if you go chasing after those boys, so help me, Al, Miss Morales began. I'm coming, Natalie grumbled, turning back toward the house. Miss Morales looked down at the cat in Finn's arms. Rocket waved his paws, struggling to be put down. Your cat might run away if we take an outdoor route back to your house, right? Miss Morales asked Finn, her voice a little gentler than it had been when she was yelling at Natalie. Maybe, Finn says. Mom says cats think for themselves. They do whatever they want. All right, quick, she said. Everyone back in the house. We'll go back through that basement tunnel, but don't touch anything. You didn't damage anything, did you? What's there to damage? Natalie asked, catching up to the others. Mrs. Morales didn't answer, but as soon as everyone was back in the house, she slammed the door hard. They all made a silent procession back toward the basement stairs, except for Mrs. Morales, sneezing twice more and complaining, mostly just to herself. How could anybody sell a house like this? Stench everywhere. Then realized that the bad smell he had noticed in the secret room wasn't just there, it was in the house and out in the yard too. He'd just kind of gotten used to it. It's like something dead and rotted mixed with lots of dirty stuff. The words that came into his head and was something evil, but Finn didn't like those words. Not when Mom was away and Miss Morales was mad at Natalie. You were really smart to find us, he said to Miss Morales, because sometimes when Mom was mad, it cheered her up to hear a compliment. We really didn't know where we'd end up. Thank the cat, not me, Miss Morales said stiffly. I followed him. They all climbed back down the stairs and went into the little room that was shut off from the rest of the basement, the same way the boring room was in the Greystones' basement. Did the tunnel spin when you went through it? Emma asked Miss Morales. Spin? Of course not, Miss Morales said, but I could barely see anything. I had to use the flashlight on my phone, see? She switched it back on as they ducked back into the secret room, or the panic room, or the tunnel. Finn wasn't sure what to call it now. Behind them, Chess switched off the lights in the empty basement. Somehow the lights had been on before the secret room were gone now, so Miss Morales' phone flashlight was the only glow around them. Finn stepped a little closer to her. At least your phone works, Natalie said sulkily. Mine completely blanked out. Honest, I didn't hear your call. Not once. Really, Natalie? Really? Miss Morales said. Try your flashlight. I bet you your phone's working now. Screaming behind Finn. Uh-huh, Miss Morales said. You never believe anything I tell you, Natalie accused, even when I'm telling the truth. So you're admitting to me that sometimes you lie, Miss Morales said. How am I supposed to know the difference? Finn wasn't used to being around kids fighting with their parents, or really anybody fighting. Rocket doesn't like hearing people yell, he said, and it was weird how injured his voice sounded. Sorry, Finn, Miss Morales said. She patted his shoulder and made her voice sound soft and gentle. What would you like for dinner tonight? Mac and cheese, maybe? But Finn saw the look Miss Morales shot Natalie. Even in the dim glow of the phone flashlights, he saw the looks Emma and Chess exchanged. It felt like everyone was keeping secrets from him. And we're going to pause there today, and tomorrow we will be back with Chapter 29.